Okay, hi guys. So for my week 4 weekly reflections, the first thing I started reading was Unit 2 from the Ada and Campoy book. It's titled Recognizing Human Qualities, and it talks about the responsibilities we have as educators to encourage the best in our students by recognizing their good qualities. I found this on page 78. And this is important to build the self-esteem of the student. I believe it's important. I've heard in the past and actually very recently as well how teachers refer to a not so well behaving student as bad, and I see this as a huge negative impact for that child. At the end of the day, as I've mentioned in my other posts and in my writing, we need to treat kids as kids because that's what they are. We cannot expect them to think like us adults do or have the maturity to do so. I believe it's not possible. So recently I had an encounter with a student to where the teacher was telling me, well, he's a bad kid, so when he behaves bad, tell him to gather his things and go to the teacher next door. And I thought that was completely wrong from her part, because I don't think any student is bad, or any kid is bad for that matter. I think it's just poor decisions. But it is what it is. I didn't approve of that, and I didn't like it. And at the end of the day, he stayed with me, and just because he was bad, quote unquote, with her, he wasn't with me. He was with me the whole time, and he behaved very well. I mean, you can tell that he might have some issues, but not to the level that she described it. And it reflected on the other students as well. Like, you can tell how negative she is towards him, that even the other students know that and see him as that bad kid. Okay, moving along. So steering away from the negative and seeing the best in others is something we need to do and install within these children. And I found that as well on page 78. A well-chosen book can provide helpful opportunities for students to further explore the subject of human relationships. I also found this on page 80. This is why you must always revise the story or the books that you're going to do for your lessons for the children. You don't want it to be inappropriate or send the wrong message to them. There was an activity actually on page 87 from this chapter, which mentions to write down your name and an adjective next to each letter of it. So my name is Jesenia, Jessenia. And next to the J, I put jolly, then extraordinary, sharing, sociable, efficient, nice, interesting, and adorable. It says, like, how do you feel after doing this kind of activity, like being positive towards yourself and using words that you believe are adjectives that describe yourself. I put that I felt great for appreciating myself in that moment, because sometimes in day-to-day you had a bad day or you did something wrong and you just put, like, all that negativity towards you, and you forget to see the goodness within yourself. And in order to see the goodness within yourself, and when you do that, you're able to spread that, to others, and especially to children if, you're thinking of becoming an educator. So let me see. So Unit 2 has been one of the most interesting chapters that I've read so far. From the other book, the Tabor book, Chapter 3 on page 37, it mentions that when a student discovers that their home language does not work in the second language situation, so therefore in school or out in public, they enter a nonverbal period. And I've never heard of this, but reading it, I actually learned that it is true. During this time, they begin to understand the new language. Since they see that they need to communicate I'm sorry. They begin to understand the new language. Yeah. So since they see that they need to communicate, then they later begin using words and completing sentences themselves in the future. So what they're doing at this moment or this period, they're just kind of observing but being nonverbal. So they're not really talking, but they're always listening. And that's what's important because they need to go ahead and grasp the language. And maybe at that point they're a little embarrassed to even try and speak it. But they're retaining the information and they're learning. Let me see. And in page 40, it compares the story of a Greek boy and his language development and how it took him a year and a half to begin to use the English language. So it took him a year and a half of what I was mentioning before, the observation, but he was taking it all in. The child was under the nonverbal period, although still involved in the class. So he was still involved, with the activities and playing with the classmates, but he wasn't really talking to them. Some children go through the rejection period, where they isolate themselves from the other students. Just because they are nonverbal doesn't mean that they aren't communicating. Some of them use anxious looks or head movements such as nodding or shaking, shrugging, whatever that is, to communicate, with the teachers. So they use nonverbal teaching techniques, which are helpful for the teachers. So if there was an example, I don't remember in detail now, but within that chapter there was an example where I think it was a little boy was drawing or something like that, and the teacher mentions, what do you want to do next? And then he's not talking. Also, you know what, let me take it away. It's something to those lines. I don't remember now exactly how it was. And then they're like, no, they're shaking. Or they're shaking their heads. So just because they're not verbally saying no, they know exactly what you're saying. So, I mean, so far, this week has been very interesting with the readings. I really enjoyed Unit 2 from the Authors in the Classroom book. I think it was very interesting how we were able to do exercises to go ahead, for ourselves, so we can appreciate ourselves a little more. And it was a good read. All right, bye.